Why did that teacher get fired from your school? Also make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy. Embezzled something like 20,000 from the school field trips she was in charge of scheduling for the whole school. All field trips that needed to be paid for she planned and took the money for. Overcharged the students but only deposited the amount for what the trip cost and kept the rest. Did it for decades and stole about $20,000 over time. Not only fired but charged and found guilty. Not sure how much time she was given. Compared to all the other answers on this thread, some good old-fashioned financial crime seems positively wholesome. Because he set up a camera in the middle school theater changing room, girls' side. His dumb ass was on the beginning of the video, turning the camera on and adjusting a modified shoebox he put over it to hide it. A student found it and took it home, watched it with parents. Goodbye, Mr. Goebel. First in the comments section we had a failed art teacher from Germany, now we've got a Mr. Goebel. There's a pattern here I'm not too sure I like. He was the gym teacher for over 30 years. He volunteered to stand near the trash cans during lunch every day to ensure the students dumped their food and gave their finished trays to the cafeteria workers in an organized way. He had done this for decades. Even when my father attended that junior high. One day, a student decided to toss her entire tray in the trash instead of dumping the contents and giving it to the cafeteria work. He removed the tray from the trash and gave it back to her. She threw a carton of chocolate milk at his face, close range. He responded by punching her in the eye. I was expecting the twist to be that he was eating any leftover lunches that were thrown away for 30+ years LOL. That teacher was my stepdad. He got fired for being physically abusive to his students. Good for the students. Bad for me and my siblings who could not just fire him. As a side note, the only place he could get a job after that was on a reservation. He started pulling that shit with those students and there was no long, drawn-out firing process. They just vandalized our house and trashed the car. Done and done. I admired the fuck out of those res kids. He wanted to date a teacher, and she turned him down. So, then he suspected that she was sleeping with a student. He then hired a private investigator and had her followed. She found out about it, went to the cops, requested a restraining order, and he was brought up on stalking charges. It was discovered that she was sleeping with the student. Reading first paragraph. Okay, Tudioko super creepy. I'm glad the female teacher was able to put a stop to it. Reads last sentence. Oh. History teacher never really taught history. Sometimes he'd just yell at the kids in class. It got worse when his son died in Desert Storm. Then he spent half the class time crying. Assistant principal had to take over one too many days. Eventually he stopped coming to school and we never saw him again. Damn. Sounds like the man was really struggling and needed help. My dad subbed, teacher, for a while after he retired. He got personally escorted out of a school once for doing black magical for 5th grader socks. He did a card trickage. And he was in the process of cutting a sheet of paper in a way that makes it possible to walk through it. He is currently banned for life from Deer Park Public Schools in WA. Side note, when I went to visit once we went to a bar. The bartender said, Octola shit, Idako's insert full name dude. I named my bong after you, Mr. Name. I guess he really influenced the youth CAECCHUSC. That side note LMAO. He was actually just a substitute. Left quicker than he arrived. He told our class he practices judo, so one student told him to show a move. The move he chose to demonstrate on the student in front of the class was a sleeper hold. Put that motherfucker right to sleep and got charged with assaulting a minor. This sounds like something that would happen in a comedy. I can just picture the sub hopping through the classroom window and hauling ass to his car from there. All his classes were failing. He spoke unintelligible, didn't explain anything well, and if anyone asked a question, he'd respond with ask someone else who does know. As if we ever wanted to ask him anything unless the entire class didn't understand. This was my old chemistry teacher. He was fired halfway through the year. We then didn't have any chemistry classes for a while. The other chemistry teacher couldn't take over all the vacant hours, but she gave us a 3-week crash course at the end of the year. I learned more in those 3 weeks than I did in the first 6 months with the fired guy. Reminds me of my history teacher in 1 year of middle school. Spoke an almost unintelligible mix of Italian and her dialect, didn't know a damn thing about history, passed the lessons talking about completely unrelated topics and then have us take the tests with the books open so she was sure grades weren't a problem. She was actually really kind but completely unfit for being a teacher, and she transferred after the end of the year. Biology teacher was fired when the principal saw how a student yelled and threw a test on the teacher's face. The teacher already had some clashes with school authorities, so they used that situation to fire her because he didn't show authority over the student cycle. A few years later I entered a bakery store and there was my old teacher. She was the owner of the store, happy, and her employees spoke very well about her. She made us pay $5 for homeworks that hasn't been done. Did paying the $5 ensure you got full credit for the homework? Because if so, someone could do pretty well in a class for the low cost of stealing the teacher's catalytic converter. Dude was a social studies teacher. He was also the girls' swim team coach. One day in class he connected his computer to the projector, but he clicked the wrong file, and instead of whatever video he intended to show the class, a video of the girls' swim team using the school's showers was presented instead. There was a girl from the swim team in the class when it happened. Dude got canned and taken out of the school by the local PD. That poor girl, that would have been so traumatic for her, not just to have been filmed but to have it presented to her peers. Not my school, but the school he went to after mine. He was hired as a soccer coach, I believe, and somehow ended up coaching cheerleaders. He ended up having a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old student. The girl wrote about it in her diary. Her mom read it, called the cops, and they had the girl invite him over for sex. He knocked on the door and they jumped out and arrested him. This was 20-ish years ago. I think he is out now. I know exactly who you are talking about. The incident happened at Longmont Christian School and he was a creep at CCS. My sister didn't want to be around him alone. Had a samurai sword in his trunk, proceeded to unsheath it during a fire drill because his lineup location was next to his car and show people yaks. The best part was that after he got fired, people posted flyers around the school of him photoshopped with a samurai outfit with the caption of "Oct free my homie samurai so and circle. Free him." Gave a student written confirmation of the zero tolerance policy, highlighting that any 2 students involved in a fight would get the same punishment. Next time the kid got bullied, he fucking tore into the bully and started pounding him in the head with a trash bin lid. The written confirmation got used to successfully demand both students suffered the same consequences, especially after the student showed he had received confirmation that he wouldn't be punished more severely for fighting back. From that point, "Can I get that in writing?" was basically a get out of jail free card. Good. I tell my kids to do the same. If you're going to get punished for defending yourself, then fight back. Don't kill them, but if they hit you, hit them harder. He was a great teacher, but it turns out there was a reason as to why he always closed his laptop when we walked by. He was watching child porn. In the 6th grade classroom on the school Wi-Fi. It's amazing to me that people don't understand how much IT can see. I have access to all your emails, all your files, all your browser history, all your phone records. No, your incognito browser does not stop me from seeing that you're browsing /r/gone wild. I see that at our web builder. If you're going to look at porn at work, use your cell and make sure you turn the Wi-Fi off. He was asked to resign because he was engaged to one of the other teachers. The of course still happily married and he made more money as a carpenter. Great guy. That doesn't seem right. At my high school there were 3 married teacher couples. She got angry with a student. Dude was an asshole, and would disrespect her daily, so she said he was a witless brat that only passed each year because his father was a corrupt lawyer that paid the school so he didn't fail every subject. She was right and everyone knew it. She got fired a week later. So she was definitely right. I hope she sued the school to hell and back. For being a shitty person and an even worse teacher. She was a complete asshole to students and parents, and she was even worse to the other members of the faculty. My mom was also a teacher at the school, and she told me horror stories about this woman. She would confront other staff and verbally abuse and belittle middle school-aged kids in front of other students. She even cursed out the other teachers in a staff meeting when they confronted her about her behavior. She was walked out by the vice principal in front of everyone in the cafeteria. The entire student body applauded. Sounds like half my JR High teachers in the 80s. Rural Missouri schools don't attract the best. He showed us Pulp Fiction in history class and forgot to take out the tape when returning AV equipment. Had a teacher show us Varsity Blues during a horticultural class. I think she got fired, but I'm pretty sure it was more because she barely gave us any assignments all year. I actually remember spending an entire class period making prank calls in her office. My friend/her son was hit and killed by a delivery driver. At first, spent all day crying or not saying anything, then went on leave. Came back and would have crying spells or just talk about her son and wouldn't teach at all. She pretty much went into a psychosis and never came back one day and was never the same again. I've seen her once outside of school years later, and I don't think she will ever recover. I feel bad for her and often wonder if she ever got better. That is very sad. I do not know how people cope with losing a child. I would crumble. One of mine was fired because she thought I was faking being sick to get out of a comp sci. That was the day I found out I am allergic to shellfish and can go into anaphylactic shock. My history teacher's son had an illness. I'm not sure what, but it was terminal. He needed more time off to be with him and his family. Apparently he had used his allotted vacation/sick time up already, and the school board wouldn't approve anymore. So he just left. Can no longer be employed in the district because of it, I heard. Everybody loved him too. One of the few teachers who really cared about his job and his students. The lady they brought in to replace him did nothing wrong, but nobody could truly replace him. The whole class dropped about 5 points in grade because of it. I missed him a lot because he was one of the few teachers I ever tried to really impress. Thatico's brutal. School bureaucrats can be horrible. She full-bodied a student on the wall and started yelling at him because he was no caught sitting still and respecting our 5th grade practice graduation ceremony. She was 6020 CL and heavy set. He was frail. You can imagine how that went. She was a love teacher though, so she got hired back as a hall monitor. Trunchbull behavior. An ex grew up in a tiny, nowhere town in Wyoming. One day they got a long lunch recess and their teacher was walked out to a car with some people in suits and military clothes. It turns out he switched dog tags with someone killed in Vietnam, and the dead soldiers' parents went to the military when their son didn't call or visit. He had hidden in one of the most isolated places in the US, and it took enough time for him to finish a degree and get a job. Seymour. She almost got fired for that, but somehow she stayed. She got pregnant with one of her students on prom night and found out after his graduation. The funniest part is, she was sex ed teacher. That's dedication to a proper learning environment, I say. He was a music teacher and he was teaching anti-Semitic conspiracy theories to the 9th graders CSC. Wagner intensifies. They posted a QR code for the Boston Public Library so that kids could get access to banned books. Not exactly fired, but written up for discipline, and eventually during the process left the school. Oops, Brooklyn, not Boston. Thanks for correction. I hope they're having a nice day, wherever they are. That's rad as hell. One of my wife's co-workers got canned as a teacher for letting the students feel her new breast implants. One kid I had math with got his dick pierced. I guess he was 18 at the time. I cannot really remember, but I assume you have to be 18 for Thatochi Hope. But anyway, everyone knew he had done it because he had been telling everyone that he was going to get it done, so he was showing people pictures of it in class one day, and the teacher asked if she could see it. And then he showed her the picture, of his dick, in the middle of class. And I was just sitting there like, this is weird, right? OCL, so yeah, that was a really weird day of math. He rubbed his pants zipper against a girl's desk and said, you like that, don't you? Then he sued the school and won, so they were forced to give him his job back. His name was Irvin, so his nickname became IRV the Perv. He sued the school and won? How the fuck does that work? BC, he got a cheerleader pregnant. Least he married her. My physics teacher, who was the track coach, and very young, got fired for having a relationship with a track girl. Meanwhile, my history teacher, who was the girls' basketball coach and also young, ended up marrying a girl who was a few years older than me and a basketball star. Still married, have a family. There was no scandal while she was still a student. I don't know if anything happened and they just hid it or if they started dating after she graduated. Small town Ohio in the 90s. She had an 78% failing rate out of all her biology classes. The class was broken off into 2 days, and one day you could spend all day in class learning and the next day you could spend time in the lab to learn the experiments. The problem with this system is we could take a test, fail, and when we went to our lab we would learn everything we needed to know for that test we had just failed. As a class we came to her and explained to her what was going on, and she caught attitudes with us every time. The worst part is, instead of stepping up and trying to help us find a solution, she could hit us with the When I was in school no one helped me and followed that up with telling us to just read our textbook. At one point there was homework that was supposed to be assigned, and when she asked for it we got confused. Turns out she never posted it for us to do, so when we told her that, she blamed us and told us we should have said something to her about the homework not being posted. The class I was in ended up having a 25 out of 27 people failing the class, with the remaining people barely passing. We gave her a review, and what I did not know at the time was not only did my entire class leave a bad review with their own stories, but her other 2 classes also left bad reviews. She was fired the last day of classes. Yikes. Were those credits recovered for the students that failed? Not a teacher, but a counselor at my high school. It was found out that he was manipulating vulnerable young girls into sex after they came to him for help. He'd trade weed or other drugs for sexual favors sometimes too. Hope he rots in jail forever. CLL. Not super relevant, but this reminded me of it, so I'll share it here. When I was in middle school there was a girl named Morgan. Morgan had massive boobs. Like, inhumanly large. She wound up getting a breast reduction when we were in high school, and she was like a different, and much happier, person after. One day, I was walking down the hall maybe 30 feet or so behind Morgan as we were both going somewhere or other. She walked past the school guidance counselor and the computer teacher, both women I assume in their 30s, who were talking, facing the direction she'd gone with their backs to me. I was always really light-footed, so I often didn't make any noise while walking, so they didn't hear me coming up behind them. I overheard their conversation. They were complaining about her and her chest, making really shitty and snide comments about her. I was like 14, so I had no clue what to say or do about any of it, so I pretended I hadn't heard them and kept on walking, but I never forgot about that. He kicked a volleyball out of anger and it bounced off of a girl's face, doing some damage. He was already on thin ice though. After doing something that really should have got him fired immediately, he shot a student's dog in retaliation after the student's dog killed his dog. The student and the teacher lived in the same neighborhood and both dogs were loose at the time the teacher's dog was originally killed. The big problem was that the dog that was shot was on a leash and being walked by the kid at the time. This was in the early 90s in South TX. Called a black kid a cotton picker. He was a science teacher and we were using cotton balls in a science experiment. Unsure what he thought the outcome of this comment could have been other than immediate termination. Not quite as bad, but one semester at the University of Alabama we had a new professor from somewhere up north. One day she asked us some dumb question about the internet, and when we didn't respond said, "Look guys, you need to either learn how to use computers, or you're all gonna have to go back to cotton farming." We knew how to use computers. But regardless, that's not something you say in Alabama. I dropped the class, but she was fired at the end of the semester. Turns out he did not actually have the credentials to teach high school English. People were pissed. BC the boys basketball team was doing really well and he could no longer coach. Also, the girls soccer coach married one of his players a few years after she graduated. Probably still coaching though, lol. We had a 7th grade teacher that was hired shortly after a series of substitute teachers failed to tame us. We loved her. She was a good teacher and made classes fun. Turns out, she wasn't a teacher at all. 0 qualifications. They found out because she thought she'd successfully prayed away her diabetes and threw us a party to celebrate. We were not a Christian school. There was cake and juice at the party, and then she took a nap at her desk and didn't wake up. When she didn't return the next day we all thought she had died, but it turns out she was fired for a lack of credentials. They encouraged her to go back to school for it, but I don't think she ever did. Her diabetes was not cured either. Burned an American flag in the classroom to illustrate free speech. She was a language arts teacher. Aside from the groups of people that would be upset by that, she also straight up lit a fire in the classroom. I don't know, my physics teacher burned stuff in the classroom all the time. Of course we had a fume hood, and it wasn't ever a flag, but she was going through a divorce. In hindsight, I guess it was a bit harsh for the school to fire her because of it. But she did kinda stop giving us classes and just spent her time unloading all of her marital problems on a bunch of 13-year-olds. In 4th grade, my band teacher was out almost the entire year because she had some pretty significant complications with her pregnancy and later childbirth. We barely learned anything because they could not find a long-term music sub. She never came back. We had a new music teacher in 5th grade. Idako's more sad than anything else really. She went on vacation to the Caribbean and decided to not come back. Don't blame her. It was a bit odd having a substitute for more than half of the year though. Touched a 10-year-old girl. She dared a troublemaker to hit her. He said, "I don't hit people with glasses." She took them off. He backed down. She said, "That's what I thought." He was disruptive and just an asshole. She backed him down. Even 20+ years later I think she handled it perfectly. The school board disagreed and she got fired. My favorite teacher did the same thing. This kid would always come in late and be an asshole and shit. Mind you, the kid is 16 to 17, so def not a kid anymore. So one day he comes in acting all tough, he gets told to sit down, the teacher turns around and when he does the student flips him off. Well, he saw that and turned around and told Jim if he wanted to act so tough like he wanted a fight, he'd fight him right there. This teacher was 65, it was his last year before retirement, and he could still probably kick my ass. Loved that teacher. Some student made allegations that the teacher had assaulted them. Teacher got fired and career ruined. Came out later that the student account was completely false and several students knew the kid intended to lie because he didn't like the teacher. The kid even made a false police report at some point during the whole fiasco. Everything came out later, but the dude's life was already ruined. This happened to my old auto CAD teacher. A girl claimed he was sleeping with her and had gotten her pregnant. It went all the way to court because she was underage. Turns out she was not pregnant, she had never slept with him, and did not like him because he was fond of jump scaring students who were goofing off instead of working. The allegations broke up his marriage and ended his career. I don't know where he is now since he, more or less, fell off the grid. As for the girl, Shioko's a Karen now and her Facebook account confirms Shioko's in an MLM. Shioko's known for ending one of the most popular electives my old school ever had, that was no sports or music. He put 2 kids in timeout, elementary school, by having them stand against a tree during lunch recess. Our lunch line went along the outside of the cafeteria, so I happened to be waiting outside right where this was happening. Well, those kids, being typical 10-year-old dipshits, started climbing the tree they were incarcerated at. So the teacher had the brilliant idea to duct tape their heads to the tree. They didn't move after that. I got home and told my mom, and she, amazingly, didn't believe me that a teacher duct taped 2 kids to a tree. My high school principal was fired for hypnotizing students. He would do it at school functions and stuff, everyone knew and was cool with it. He hypnotized a bunch of seniors in my class after graduation, funniest thing I've ever seen. This isn't going where you think it's going though, because he wasn't trying to bang high school girls. It was found out he was hypnotizing the football team before games to be better. Not that it worked, they were always shit, and probably still are shit. But that was discovered as cheating, and he was fired for it. Wait, was this in Northport, Florida? The school with the suicides? This creepy teacher in our school who taught German to grade 8 students used to text boys from the class and ask them about their penis size. He even took a boy to a separate room and was inappropriately touching him. The boy later complained about it to his parents. His parents even tried to sue the school.